Hi everyone! Hope you're all having a good evening so far. It's time for another bedtime story, and you know what that means. Yes, you have to go to sleep now on a Friday night. I know that it's quarantine and you don't have work tomorrow, but it's purge rules and that's the rule. You have to go to bed after the bedtime story. So here we are. Tonight we will be reading from the Prydain Chronicles, which is one of my favorite series in all of children's literature and all of fantasy period. I think it works well for all audiences. So if you're a kid, you can read it. If you're an adult, you can read it. If you're both, you can read it. Highly recommend this one. I'm starting in the middle because I don't have my whole series with me, and I haven't read this fourth one in a little bit, but it is one of my favorites, so bear with me as I sight read it. I picked this one for many reasons, one of which you will see soon enough as I get into doing the voices. We'll see how that works. The other is in my master's program, I spent like a whole year focused on these books, and it was really wonderful to get to revisit them. And I got to learn a lot about Lloyd Alexander, who's just a delightful human being. He's one of those people who, like, the more I learned about him, the more I was a fan. And I got to kind of go through a lot of his old papers and interviews for this project I was working on, which was really cool. It just made me love the whole series even more. So I'm going to share it with you a little bit. I'm going to start with chapter 1. It's a very good place to start. Actually, I'll start a little further back. This book has a map, so you know it's good. That's how these things work. Blah, 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 introductions, blah, 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 another map. All right, chapter 1. Who am I? There's another reason I picked this. It was full springtime, with promise of the richest summer the farm had ever seen. The orchard was white with fragrant blossoms, the newly planted fields lay light as green mist. Yet the sights and scents gave Taran little joy. To him, Caer Dallben was empty. Though he helped Coll with the weeding and cultivating, and tended the white pig, Henwen, with as much care as ever, he went about his tasks distractedly. One thought alone was in his mind. "Now, my boy," Coll said good-naturedly as they finished the morning's milking, "I've seen you restless as a wolf on a tether ever since you came back from the Isle of Mona. Pine for the Princess Eloinwe if you must, but don't upset the milk pail." The stout old warrior clapped Taran on the shoulder. "Come, cheer up. I'll teach you the high secrets of planting turnips, or raising cabbages, or whatever you might want to know." Taran shook his head. "What I would know, only Dallben can tell me." "Take my counsel then," said Coll. "Trouble Dallben with none of your questions. His thoughts are on deeper matters. Have patience and bide your time." Taran rose to his feet. "I can bide my time no longer. It is in my heart to speak with him now." "Have a care," warned Coll as Taran strode to the door of the shed. "His disposition rubs a little thin." Taran made his way through the cluster of low-roofed farm buildings. In the cottage, at the hearthside, a black-robed woman crouched and tended the cooking fire. She did not raise her head or speak. It was Acren. Thwarted in her scheme to regain her ancient power, spoiler alert, from the ruined castle of Lyre, the once haughty queen had accepted the refuge Dallben offered, though, by her own choice, she who had long ago ruled Prydain toiled now at the tasks Eloinwe had done before departing for Mona, and at day's end silently vanished to her pallet of straw in the granary. Before Dallben's chamber, Taran paused uneasily, then rapped quickly on the door. Entering at the enchanter's command, he found Dallben bent over the Book of Three, which lay open on the cluttered table. Much as he longed for a glimpse at even one page of this secret volume, Taran kept his distance from it. Once, in boyhood, he dared touch the ancient leather-bound tome, and his fingers smarted again at the memory. "I never cease to wonder," Dallben testily remarked, closing the Book of Three and glancing at Taran, "that the young, with all their pride of strength, should find their own concern such a weighty burden that they must be shared with the old. Whereas the old—" he waved a frail, bony hand. "But no matter, no matter. For the sake of my temper, I hope your purpose in interrupting me is an excellent one." First, before you ask, Dalbin went on, I assure you the Princess Olanwe is well and no more unhappy than any pretty young madcap obliged to turn a hand to sewing instead of sword-play. Second, you are as aware as I am that Caul has not yet returned. By now I dare say he has borne my potion to Glue's cavern, and the giant by accident who troubled you so much on Mona will shrink to the small stature he once had. But you also know your crow for a rascal, and one to linger wherever he finds sport. Finally, an assistant pig-keeper should have tasks enough to busy himself outdoors. What, then, brings you here? One thing only, Taran said. All that I have I owe to your kindness. You have given me a home and a name, and let me live as a son in your household. Yet who am I in truth? Who are my parents? You have taught me much, but kept this always from me. Since it has always been thus, Dalbin replied, why should it trouble you now? When Taran bowed his head and did not answer, the old enchanter smiled shrewdly at him. Speak up, my boy. If you want truth, you should begin by giving it. Behind your question, I think I see the shadow of a certain golden-haired princess. Is that not so? Taran's face flushed. It is so, he murmured. He raised his eyes to meet Dalbin's. When Olanwe returns, it is in my heart to ask her to wed. But this I cannot do, he burst out. This I will not do until I learn who I am. An unknown foundling with a borrowed name cannot ask for the hand of a princess. What is my parentage? I cannot rest until I know. Am I lonely born or nobly? To my mind, Dalbin said softly, the latter would please you better. It would be my hope, Taran admitted, a little abashed. But no matter. If there is honor, yes, let me share it. If there is shame, let me face it. It takes as much strength of heart to share the one as to face the other, Dalbin replied gently. He turned his careworn face to Taran. But alas, he said, what you ask I may not answer. Prince Gwydion knows no more than I, he went on, sensing Taran's thought, nor can the High King Math help you. Then let me learn for myself, Taran cried. Give me leave to seek my own answer. Dalbin studied him carefully. The enchanter's eyes fell on the Book of Three, and he gazed long at it, as though his glance penetrated deep into the worn leather volume. Once the apple is ripe, he murmured to himself, no man can turn it back to a greening. His voice grew heavy with sorrow as he said to Taran, Is this indeed your wish? Taran's heart quickened. I ask nothing more. Dalbin nodded. So it must be. Journey then, wherever you choose. Learn what lies in your power to learn. You have all my thanks, Taran cried joyfully, bowing deeply. Let me start without delay. I am ready. Before he could finish, the door burst open, and a shaggy figure sped across the chamber and flung itself at Taran's feet. No, 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 howled Gurgi at the top of his voice, rocking back and forth and waving his hairy arms. Sharper Gurgi, here's all. Oh yes, with listenings behind the door. His face wrinkled in misery, and he shook his matted head so violently he nearly sprawled flat on the floor. Poor Gurgi will be alone and lorn with whinings and pinings, he moaned. Oh, he must go with master. Yes, yes. Taran put a hand on Gurgi's shoulder. It would sadden me to leave you, old friend, but my road, I fear, may be a long one. Faithful Gurgi will follow, pleaded Gurgi. He is strong, bold, and clever to keep kindly master from harmful hurtings. Gurgi began snuffling loudly, whimpering and moaning more desperately than before, and Taran, who could not bring himself to deny the unhappy creature, looked questioningly at Dalbin. A strange glance of pity crossed the enchanter's face. Gurgi's staunchness and good sense I do not doubt, he said to Taran, though before your search is ended, the comfort of his kindly heart may stand you in better stead. Yes, he added slowly, if Gurgi is willing, let him journey with you. Gurgi gave a joyous yelp, and Taran bowed gratefully to the enchanter. So be it, Dalbin said. Your road indeed will not be easy, but set out on it as you choose. Though you may not find what you seek, you will surely return a little wiser, and perhaps even grown to manhood in your own right. That night Taran lay restless. Dalbin had agreed the two companions could depart in the morning, but for Taran the hours until sunrise weighed like the links of a heavy chain. A plan had formed in his mind, but he had said nothing of it to Dalbin, Cole, or Gurgi, for he was half fearful of what he had decided. While his heart ached at the thought of leaving Caer Dalbin, it ached the more with impatience to begin his journey, and it was as though his yearning for Eilonwy, the love he had often hidden or even denied, now swelled like a flood, driving him before it. Long before dawn, Taran rose and saddled the gray, silver-maned stallion, Melonless, while Gurgi, blinking and yawning, readied his own mount, a short, stocky pony, almost as shaggy as himself. Taran went alone to Hinwen's enclosure. As though she had already sensed Taran's decision, the white pig squealed dolefully as he knelt and put an arm around her. "Farewell, Hen," Taran said, scratching her bristly chin. "Remember me kindly. Cole will care for you until I—" "Oh, Hen," he murmured, "shall I come happily to the end of my quest? Can you tell me? Can you give me some sign of good hope?" In answer, however, the oracular pig only wheezed and grunted anxiously. Taran sighed and gave Hinwen a last affectionate pat. Dalbin had hobbled into the dooryard, and beside him Cole raised a torch, for the morning still was dark. Like Dalbin's, the old warrior's face in the wavering light was filled with fond concern. Taran embraced them, and to him it seemed his love for both had never been greater than at this leave-taking as they said their farewells. Gurgi sat hunched atop the pony. Slung from his shoulder was his leather wallet with its inexhaustible supply of food. Bearing only his sword at his belt and the silver-bound battle-horn Eilonwy had given him, Taran swung astride the impatient Melonless, constraining himself not to glance backward, knowing if he did, his parting would grieve him the more deeply. The two wayfarers rode steadily while the sun climbed higher above the rolling, tree-fringed hills. Taran had spoken little, and Gurgi trotted quietly behind him, delving now and again into the leather wallet for a handful of food which he munched contentedly. When they halted to water, their mounts at a stream, Gurgi clambered down and went to Taran's side. "Kindly master," he cried, "faithful Gurgi follows as he leads, oh yes! Where does he journey first with amblings and ramblings? To noble Lord Gwydion at Caer Dathel? Gurgi longs to see high golden towers and great halls for feastings." "I too," answered Taran, "but it would be labor lost. Dalbin has told me Prince Gwydion and King Math know nothing of my parentage." "Then to kingdom of Flutterflam? Yes, yes! Bold bard will welcome us with meetings and greetings, with merry hummings and strummings." Taran smiled at Gurgi's eagerness, but shook his head. "No, my friend, not to Caer Dathel, nor to Flutter's realm." He turned his eyes westward. "I have thought carefully of this, and believe there is only one place where I might find what I seek," he said slowly. "The marshes of Morva." No sooner had he spoken these words than he saw Gurgi's face turn ashen. The creature's jaw dropped. He clapped his hands to his shaggy head and began gasping and choking frightfully. "No, oh no!" Gurgi howled. "Dangers lurk in evil marshes. Bold but cautious Gurgi fears for his poor tender head. He wants never to return there. Fearsome enchantress would have turned him into a toad with hoppings and floppings. Oh, terrible Ordu, terrible Orwen, and Orgok worst of all." "Yet I mean to face them again," Taran said. "Ordu, Orwen, and Orgok, she, or they, or whatever they may really be, are as powerful as Dalbin. Perhaps more powerful. Nothing is hidden from them. All secrets are open. They would know the truth. Could it not be," he went on, his voice quickening hopefully, "could it not be that my parents were of noble lineage, and for some secret reason left me with Dalbin to foster?" "But kindly master is noble," Gurgi cried. "Noble, generous, and good to humble Gurgi. No need to ask enchantresses." "I speak of noble blood," Taran replied, smiling at Gurgi's protests. "If Dalbin cannot tell me, then Ordu may. Whether she will, I do not know," he added, "but I must try." "I won't have you risk your poor tender head," Taran continued. "You shall find a hiding place at the edge of the marshes and wait for me there." Oops, that was a Taran line. No, no, Gurgi moaned. He blinked wretchedly, and his voice fell so low that Taran could scarcely hear his trembling whisper. Faithful Gurgi follows as he promised. And that is all for tonight. But that was Taran Wanderer. Definitely go check it out if you haven't read it, or if you have, reread it. Have a good night.